Okay. Well, let's move on to another topic. Next thing I want to talk about are calculated fields. That is, we need to create a new piece of information based on information in the database, like age. We don't know people's ages. We know their date of birth, but if we want to calculate their age, we have to do that. If we want to add up their home value and their income to come up with some sort of wealth index, that the basic information is in there, but the formula is not in there. So calculated field is in some sense like a formula, and they work kind of like this. So you just create a query. Close this one. So you go create query design. So let me just, I want a ratio of their home value to their household income. So, I'm looking for people, I don't know, whose house is worth way much more than their income for whatever reason. Okay, so I'm going to need to know all that information is in the household table, and I want to know which household. So obviously I'm going to want to pick household ID number. And just me being cautious about this stuff, I'm going to pick those two fields, home value, whoops, messed up, home value, and then household income. Okay. But what I really want is the ratio of those two. And so I'm going to create a new field here, and we'll calculate that value, and then we can look back and make sure that we're doing things right. Okay. All right. Up here in the middle of the ribbon, there's that little magic wand. Why they chose that icon, I have no idea. But that's the builder. This is how you build. It's called an expression in Access, right? So we'll use this to build the expression that we want here. Okay. So up here's what it's going to look like. And down here is the information one. Now, to do this right, you have to type in the fully qualified field name. And the easiest way to do that is just to do a click and pick here. So I want to find household income, which I know is in the household table. Here's the fields in there. And I'll pick household income. So if you were to type that in, you could type it up there. You can type in whatever you want into your expression, but to use that field, you have to type that entire thing in, including the exclamation point and all the square brackets and all that sort of stuff. So it's probably easier to find it this way, unless you know exactly what you want. Okay, divided by, so you just pick the divided by symbol, the slash, the typical one you'd use for division. And then you pick the other fields you want. And that happens to be, oh wait, I got that backwards, right? Sorry. It should be home value divided by household income is what I wanted. Okay. So there's my expression. Okay. And then I'll just say okay here. And notice back here now in this new column, it says EXPR1 : That's the field name for this new field that we're creating for this table. It doesn't exist, so we're creating a new field, a new column in this output table. EXPR1 is the shorthand for expression 1. If you want to give it a more legitimate name or something that will help you remember what it is, you would just replace the EXPR1 with whatever you want. So we'll just call this wealth ratio. So just take out the EXPR1, leave the colon. That's what separates the field name from the expression itself. And then you can just type in here wealth ratio or whatever you'd want to call that, right? And then you can run it. And here it is, out to some insane number of decimal places. And yeah, that's 4 times. That's maybe twice. So I'm just kind of looking through here, just making sure. I mean, this form is so simple, it's hard to believe that would mess it up. But again, we want to be cautious about this stuff. So if that's what we'd want, if that's the right ratio, then what you could do is you could come back in here and you could just get rid of these 2 fields now, if you're sure your formula is working right. And there's the wealth ratio for all the households in our database. Okay? Now, this is just a field, right? And remember, back at the very beginning, I said there's a certain order of things. You pick the table. We pick the table. You pick the columns that you want, the fields that you want, and then you pick the records that you want to keep. So if I didn't want to keep all those households, then down here I could say anybody whose wealth ratio is greater than 4 or something like that. So I could just apply that criteria here. And again, if I wanted particular states or there are other criteria, I would just add that stuff in there. So everything else works the same. Okay. But again, you sort of do this top down. You pick the table, you pick the columns, the fields, and then you pick the records. Okay. I'm just going to go back to Expression Builder for a second. Again, if you want to make this column bigger to see the whole thing, you just click and drag and widen it out like that. Or sometimes it's easier to see it back in the Expression Builder. So you could go back into the builder up here, and you can see it up here. All right. Okay. Now, Access has a lot of the same functions that Excel has. Not all of them, but most of them. The ones that you typically use, you'd see here and stuff. So if you ever need to use a function, they're right up here under that list right there. And if you go to built-in functions, they're even categorized pretty much the way we saw them in Excel. So if you need, some for data arithmetic or whatever, you can do that stuff in here. If you need the square root or whatever, or I don't know. I don't think, it even has financial functions. So again, my favorite function, right? The payment function. If we had a column where we had the loan amount, another column where we had, interest rate, and a third one for length of the loan, you could calculate the payment. It would work just the same way. You just build the expression this way, okay? And so on and so forth. The text functions, if you need to get something from the left or the middle or from the right, same thing here, so on and so forth. So the functions that we used before work pretty much the same here. Not a lot of difference there. Okay. Now, obviously, we don't need something out to whatever that is, like 15 decimal points. If we want to trim that down, we can do that through the property sheet. So I'm going to pick that field first down here in my output table or answer table. And then up here on the right-hand side of the ribbon where it says property sheet. Then I'm going to pick a format and I'll pick fixed because I want a fixed number of decimal places. And then I can pick whatever I want here. I don't know. One's probably enough. And there's my, now all that's doing is just changing the displayed value. But, it's a lot cleaner to look at. It's a lot easier to read and understand. Okay. And what else? Oh, and string functions. The only different one, there is no concatenate. You just use the little ampersand symbol between two strings. So for example, if I wanted to, and while we run do this will become clear next week when we do this. If I wanted to put the household ID number together with the state or something like that, then I would go builder. Well, let's just pick a couple of, we're in households. We'll pick state and then ampersand zip code. If we wanted to put that into one string so that's in one field for whatever purposes, that's what you do. That's the only difference between that and the string functions that you used before. In fact, it's easier than concatenate because you just put the little symbol in there. Okay? And that's pretty much it for that sort of stuff. So questions about expressions, building your own. Now, see, the reason we do this is that the idea in the database is you should never keep numbers that are going to change over time because, like people's ages, a certain number of people are going to get a year older because it happens to be their birthday and the day you're working and stuff like that. So instead of storing people's ages, you'd want to store their date of birth, and then if you ever need to calculate your age, you can do that sort of stuff. So we just do, that's just the way we do that sort of stuff. All right, so your turn. On to practice 3 and answer those questions, and we'll wrap up.